Joining me from his luxurious abode, 2008 Premiership Hawk and fan favourite, Campbell Brown. Welcome to Hawthorn Fan TV.
G'day, A-Rod. How are you, mate? Great to be joining you.
Fantastic to have you on board. I thought when we were playing against your two old clubs, Hawthorn and the Gold Coast, I thought I'm going to try and get Brownie on. We've talked a lot about Hawthorn's season so far this year. What did you make of the performance today against the Gold Coast Suns?
It was sensational, wasn't it? I didn't think that the Gold Coast brought too much pressure early on. It was a bit like witches' hats out there in the first quarter, but obviously the Hawks came to play. And sometimes in the last game of the year, when Hawthorn obviously retiring it's been a pretty long year. Some of the young guys that have had great years are probably fatiguing a little bit. They clearly didn't come with the same killer mindset, and Hawks made them pay.
What have you made of the season? There's a lot of talk. We were 3-1 before heading into, the hub environment. And then, we've won 2 games since then against Carlton and today against the Gold Coast. Do you reckon there are reasons as to why the drop away has been so severe since being 3-1? We haven't adapted to hub life. What do you reckon is behind it? Yeah,
it's interesting. There's probably multiple, theories around it, but I just felt like the playing group, for whatever reason this year, didn't quite click the way they have. I thought, if anything, at the start of the year when we were going into hubs, it would work better for an experienced, aged, mature side. But it didn't work out that way. Some of the senior guys, probably didn't have the years that we were expecting from them. And there's no doubt that, every individual would be different. Some young guys might really enjoy the hub experience. I'm positive that the older guys with kids and wives and everything, being separated from them, having to go into quarantine, not sure when they're going to see them, that'd play a significant role in players' mindsets, I reckon. So maybe because we've got the oldest list in the comp, it worked the opposite to what I was expecting. But disappointing year. There were glimpses. I was extremely upset when we lost to Essendon a couple of weeks ago, giving up that lead. It's inexcusable ever, but especially against our old enemy, the Essendon Footy Club. But yes, we blooded some young kids, and there's going to be some really important list decisions to be made now.
What did you make of the young ones that came in this season? Obviously, Will Day's clearly been the biggest positive this season. Scrimshaw's gone to another level. Greaves has had the last month, and he's looked pretty comfortable. McGuinness played last week. Dylan Moore looked good today. What have you made of the young ones who have been given? James Cousins is another one who's been in and out in his time at Hawthorn, and he's had an extended run the last 5 or 6 weeks. What have you made of the young ones that have come into the side this year?
Yeah, I reckon you're pretty accurate with that. Will Day's been a revelation down there. It looks like he's already played 100 games. And it's amazing when you give young kids opportunity, you quickly find out if they can adapt to the level. And I thought Greaves, has been terrific in the last month. And so they just need to continue to build. But it's a delicate balance in a way, because when I went up to the Gold Coast, there was not many senior guys, and we had so many young guys. We just tried to play them, and we were thinking, just by giving them games, they would be better at 40 games than they were 20. But that's not always the case if you don't have the experience, the leadership, and the really good structures around them. And so you need to get that balance right. And I reckon that's one of the main reasons why a guy like Sean Burgoyne has been given a 1-year deal. Because you just can't get rid of all the old blokes, you know what I mean? And he's pretty versatile in the fact he can play back, midfield and forward. So he's got a few strings to his bow that maybe some of the other older guys don't have. But, I don't think we'll be pushing for top 4 or even top 8 next year. It'll be a real, rebuilding phase for the club, which we haven't really done for 15 years. You need to keep that blend, that balance of senior guys that are still contributing, but getting games into young blokes and making sure that they earn their games as well. That's a really big thing for me. Integrity of selection. You've got to play them, but if they don't warrant getting picked, then don't just give them games for the sake of it, because that really hurts a footy club if young blokes are just playing and they don't really earn their jumper.
Were you surprised that it took McGuinness until the second last round to play? And on Burgoyne, who you mentioned, are you for him going on next year for his final season?
Yeah. I thought that was a really good decision. Obviously, it could have gone either way, but what I mentioned is his versatility. He can play in the midfield. He went forward today, kicked a couple of goals just with good body work and things like that. So, I would have liked to have seen Finn McGuinness exposed to the level a little bit earlier. He just had the one game, didn't he? And then was managed or out this week. So he's an elite runner. He's got to put some bulk onto his frame, but all the indications are that he's going to be a really good long-term prospect for the footy club.
A hot topic that's been discussed on our show throughout the year has been the two-ruck situation with Segler and McElvoy, who spent a lot of time down in defence this year. What do you make of the two ruckman that we go with, where a lot of other teams, especially this year in the shortened quarters, have gone with the sole ruckman?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. Like, Clarko likes to think outside the square a little bit, and I never even considered Big Boy becoming a defender.
Yeah.
I think he trialled it in the last game of the year last year against West Coast Eagles, and it worked pretty well. And he's done a pretty good job down back. Yes, he's been exposed on occasions, but he's still sort of learning the defensive craft, and I reckon he's been good. The good thing about that is if for whatever reason Segler or goes down with an injury or isn't getting the job done, you've got a ready-made ruckman to throw straight in there. So I'm not a big believer of playing one ruckman and then pinch hitting with a medium-sized forward or whatever it is, because midfielders are just far too good these days. You need, if you've got an advantage with your ruckman, you need to use that, I think. I haven't minded it. It certainly hasn't been the reason why we dropped down the ladder this year. There's been plenty of other reasons we need to address as a footy club. It hasn't been, the ruck. If anything, I think Segler's had a great year.
Looking ahead to next year, a couple of your premiership teammates have come out in recent weeks and talked about, Gunston, Bruce. I think it might have been Hodgie said about, O'Meara, Wingard and Mitchell. Clarko might have a talk to them. Gunston and Bruce are the two that are being mentioned the most. In your opinion, they have to be kept, don't they?
Absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, the last 2 weeks has just showed you how important Jack Gunston is. We've really struggled to kick a goal this year. Offensively, we've been extremely poor as a footy club, and he really consistently has been our only forward that's hit the scoreboard. So Mitch Lewis hasn't come on like we were hoping. Poppy, wasn't even getting a game until today. O'Brien's been, a little bit hit and miss.
Glimpses.
And, we've seen glimpses, and he probably needs to go to the next level for the Hawthorn Footy Club, because he's been on the list now for a long time. But Jack Gunston, I mean, he could have had 7 or 8 goals today. Kicked 4. He set up Strattons. He probably missed 1 or 2 he would have liked to have kicked. So he's ended up with 31 for the year, which is the same number as Charlie Dixon and Josh Kennedy. So, I mean, we talk about them as being elite forwards in the competition, and Jack Gunston's been able to do that in a side that, struggled offensively, and he spent a bit of time down back in that as well. He's not just a permanent stay-at-home forward. So we've got to keep Jack, and Hawthorn wouldn't dream of getting rid of a guy like him, because if he goes, where do we kick a score?
Exactly. I mean, to kick 31 goals in a team that has won 5 games and has been, pretty terrible since round 5, and the forward line's been, a mess for a lot of that period. Yeah. Dysfunctional. To kick 31 goals just shows you what how consistent he's been this season. Another premiership player whose name has been mentioned, and he was, linked with a move to the Dogs last year, Isaac Smith. Where do we sit with him? Do we keep, talks of a 2-year deal is on the table for him? Where are we leaning towards with Isaac Smith?
Yeah, he's another one that he's a really good leader out there. He's still playing at a high level. With age, none of these guys are at their peak anymore, but they're still producing, good AFL performances. And I'd like to see Isaac kept. I think he's a really good run with the run and carry player, high meters gained guy, and a good user. So, there's footy clubs at the moment. They're still waiting for the AFL to tell them exactly what the list sizes are going to be. So we're expecting that they're going to be sort of cut to 38, 37, whatever that may be. So usually you've got to move 4 or 5 players on. This year it might be 8. So there's going to be some really tough calls. But like I said, if you're weighing up players, you probably lean towards guys that are a bit younger, that have got more years to give. But in saying that, you can't just get rid of all the old blokes just because of their age. If they've still got ability and key roles to play, and that's sometimes not always just on the footy field, but at the club in terms of their training and their leadership as well. Because with COVID and everything, we still don't know what next year's going to look like. Is it going to be hubs again? Things like that.
Exactly.
So it's an uncertain time.
We're still in the unknown. Do you think, we saw North Melbourne, they played Thursday night. The next day they delisted 11 players. Could you see Hawthorn doing a cull of that size, like 8+? Could you see something like that happening?
I think it'll probably be 7 or 8. Yes, we've already got the 2 guys that have retired. The one thing Hawthorn have never done, and Graham Wright and Clarko and the guys, they've never just made snap-second decisions. It's always based on what's going on, and we don't know what exactly the draft is looking like. We don't know what the trade periods are looking like. And while it's from a player's perspective, if you were one of the guys that are waiting for a definitive answer, you get frustrated. But the club probably can't tell these guys with any certainty for the next little period. And it'd be really hard, for guys. But that's just the way it is. So they probably won't make these decisions until they've got definitive answers from the AFL in terms of the draft and the trade period.
A couple more questions before I let you go, and I appreciate you jumping on. Clarko, there's been a lot of talk over him pretty much since since we've had the success that he's been linked with Adelaide, he's been linked with West Coast, GWS he's been linked with. Out of contract at the end of 2022, obviously, we're in this rebuilding phase, if that's what you want to call it. Can you see him ending at 2022, or do you think that he will want to go on and push on for a few more years after that? Where do you reckon what'll happen with Clarko?
That's really interesting. I've always said that I see Clarko, he's a career coach, so he's going to coach until he's, probably 65, 70 years of age. Is that going to be at Hawthorn for the whole time? Probably not, because there'll be a period of time, at a stage where the best decision for Clarko is to move on, and the best decision for the footy club is to move on, So whether that's in 2 years, who knows? It's still too hard to tell. But one thing about Clarko is you can never question his commitment and dedication to the club and the cause. So he'll be seeing his contract out, and he'll be doing his absolute best to rebuild the footy club, and then he'll probably make a decision, halfway through that 2021 season as to whether he commits long term again to the footy club or not. So it'll be fascinating. He's the best coach I've ever had. I couldn't speak more highly about him. And the one thing he does as good as anyone in the competition is the way he farewells his stars.
Yes.
And we saw that today. It's all class. Throwing Benny Stratton forward, it's a little thing, but it's just a great thing. And the way they did it to Ruffy, the year before that, and the way they've done it across the board has just been first class.
So do you think that if he does leave Hawthorn, whenever that might be, that he will coach another club?
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. I've got no doubt. I just when that is, we don't know. But I can see Clarko coaching in the AFL for another 15 years. Is he going to be at Hawthorn for another 15 years, that's a long relationship. You know, that'd be surpassing Kevin Sheedy, wouldn't it? You know, because he's already been there for 15, so that'd be taking it to sort of 30, which is a long period of time. But I'm sure Clark will be coaching the Hawthorn Footy Club for as long as he wants, because he's got the full support of the players and the board and everyone.
Your 2008 Premiership teammate, Sam Mitchell, next in line?
Probably, yeah. Which would be interesting. I've always said it'd be extremely hard for a player that had played at a club to take their first senior coaching job at that club. And history suggests that it hasn't worked out that well for Michael Voss and James Hird and Justin Lepich and a few of those guys when they've gone back for whatever reason. It has worked for Buckley, but for a little while there, it was a little bit
dicey,
tenuous, wasn't it? So Mitch will be a senior coach. I've absolutely no doubt about that. Whether it's at Hawthorn, who knows? But he'd be very good. I reckon it'd be hard. Personally, I would like a fresh start at another club. You know what I mean? But it's up to each individual.
Last question before I let you go. Who will win the best and fairest? I reckon it's a pretty open field. I reckon you could have 3 or 4 that could, rightful chance for it. Who would be your selection to win the Peter Crimmins medal?
Yeah, you'd probably think that James Sicily will be leading by a long way until he goes down. And then after that, Tom Mitchell hasn't had the years that he's had previously. His output has been down a little bit, but he's still been pretty consistent and he's played the majority of games. Jager's missed and some of the other, Warple's missed. I reckon Jack Gunston will be up there as well. We've already spoken about his good year. He'll poll, probably max votes for the last 2 games of the year, so he'll be coming home strongly. Who else do you think would be up there?
While I don't think he will win, I reckon he will be definitely in the top 5, and I think he's been a very underrated recruit, is Sam Frost.
Yeah, well, no, he's done his job. He's done his job pretty well, and he's had a lot of work to do down back. So yeah, it's not a bad call.
Yeah, I don't think he'll win it, but if would not shock me if he finishes top 5. And I think Big Boy will probably be up there as well. But if you had to ask me, I reckon Gunston, Sicily would be leading it until he got injured. But I'd say just based purely on consistency, output, I'd say Gunston will end up winning it. Brownie, thanks for jumping on. I've been wanting you on here for a long time, and I thought this was the perfect occasion to get you on. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
Pleasure. No worries. See you, Rod.